Miles Wei did not plan to get involved in anything beyond his own career that year. He had scripts to memorize, contracts to sign, appearances to maintain, and a carefully managed public image that kept him safely within the boundaries of acceptable industry silence. But silence has a way of breaking when it is touched by something it was never meant to hold. It started with a file. Not a dramatic package, not a mysterious visitor, not a cinematic handoff in a dark parking garage. Just a single encrypted file sent to an inactive backup contact that Miles rarely checked. It sat there unnoticed for days until something in him decided to open it without knowing why. Inside was not a video or a confession, but fragments of text interwoven with symbols, timestamps, and voice patterns that did not immediately make sense. At first glance, it looked like corrupted data, the kind most people would delete without hesitation. But something about the structure felt intentional. Deliberate, like someone had broken language apart on purpose and left it for someone patient enough to rebuild it. The name attached to the file stopped him completely. Yu Menglong. It should not have been there. Not like that. Not in that context. Not in that state of fragmentation that suggested urgency rather than design. The entertainment world had already wrapped his name in distance, as if moving it far enough into the past would prevent anyone from asking new questions. But the file did not feel like the past. It felt like something unfinished. Miles did not tell anyone. Not his manager. Not his closest colleagues. Not even the people he trusted with everything else. Because there are some discoveries that change the temperature of a room even before you speak about them. He began decoding it alone at night. Each layer he broke revealed another beneath it. At first it seemed like emotional writing disguised as encryption. Then it became structured. Then mathematical. Then something closer to a map than a message. Coordinates hidden inside punctuation patterns. Names encoded in frequency shifts of repeated characters. References to meetings that never appeared in official schedules. Mentions of corridors, studios, contracts, and private agreements that did not match any public timeline. And then came the voice fragments. Short audio distortions embedded like corrupted memories. A voice that sounded like Yu Menglong speaking in unfinished sentences, as if interrupted mid-thought, as if time itself had been cut around him. The more Miles listened, the more uncomfortable the silence between those fragments became. Because silence was not empty. It was edited. That realization changed everything. Miles started cross-referencing what he was finding with publicly available information, but nothing aligned cleanly. Dates almost matched. Events almost overlapped. Names almost appeared where they should not have. The pattern was not random, but it was not fully visible either. It was designed to be partially hidden, like someone wanted the truth to exist, but never fully surface. And that is when the fear began. Not fear of danger in the physical sense, but fear of implication. Because every layer he uncovered did not just point outward. It also pointed inward, toward systems he had worked inside for years without questioning. The industry had always felt structured, controlled, predictable. But this file suggested something else entirely. Something layered beneath contracts and agencies. Something involving selective visibility. Careers that rose and disappeared without clear explanation. Projects that were quietly adjusted after private meetings that never entered public records. Miles kept going anyway. Because stopping felt worse than continuing. The deeper he went, the clearer one pattern became. Yu Menglong was not just communicating. He was documenting. Not in a direct way, but in fragments that only made sense when combined with external data. It was like he knew someone would eventually try to understand, even if he would never see the outcome. Then came the turning point. A sequence of numbers repeated across multiple sections of the file began aligning with internal scheduling structures of major production events. When overlaid with publicly available timelines, it created gaps. Not small gaps. Large ones. Entire missing windows of time where official records did not match inferred activity. Miles realized he was looking at something that was never meant to be reconstructed. And that realization came with a second, heavier understanding. Someone else might already know he had found it. The first warning was subtle. A change in phone behavior. A delay in message delivery. A silence from people who normally responded quickly. Small things that could be dismissed individually, but together created a pattern of awareness around him. Then came the meeting request. Not a threat, not an accusation, just an invitation from someone far above his usual professional circle. The kind of invitation that does not feel optional even when it is phrased politely. He went. The room was ordinary. Too ordinary. That was the first unsettling detail.
No dramatic lighting.
No visible security presence.
No theatrical atmosphere.
Just calm professionalism designed to make everything feel controlled. They did not mention the file directly at first. They asked questions about his workload, his current projects, his future plans. The kind of questions that seem harmless until you realize they are mapping your position rather than your intentions. Miles understood then that the file was known, or at least suspected. The conversation shifted eventually, carefully, like a blade being turned rather than drawn. They did not deny the existence of anything he had found. They did not confirm it either. Instead, they framed it as misinterpretation. Overthinking. A dangerous habit in an industry that relies on perception management. But the tone was not convincing. It was controlled. And control always reveals more than denial. When he left that room, nothing was explicitly different, yet everything felt heavier. As if he had crossed an invisible boundary and could no longer return to the version of reality he had entered with. That night, he reopened the file again.
But parts of it had changed.
Not erased. Not corrupted. Adjusted. Certain lines were now missing. Certain timestamps shifted slightly. Certain fragments replaced with cleaner versions that no longer aligned perfectly with what he had seen before. It was subtle enough that most people would doubt their memory, but not enough to fool someone who had already memorized it. That was the moment he understood the most dangerous part of the entire situation. The message was not just a record. It was alive, being watched, being edited, being contained in real time. Miles stopped sleeping properly after that. Not because of fear alone, but because of responsibility. Once you see something structured like that, you cannot unsee the implication that it might not be isolated, that it might extend further than a single name or a single career. Then came the final layer of the file, a single line that had not been visible before. It appeared only after repeated decoding attempts, like it was designed to unlock under persistence. It was not a confession. It was not a warning. It was a direction. A reference point that did not lead to a place, but to a system. A system of connections, agreements, and silent alignments that explained why certain careers accelerated while others disappeared without explanation. Why certain stories were amplified while others were never allowed to surface. Why some names remained untouched no matter what surrounded them. Miles closed the file after that. Not because he had finished understanding it, but because he finally understood enough to know that understanding further would change everything permanently. And yet, even after closing it, the file was not gone. Because truth like that does not stay inside devices. It moves. Through people. Through silence. Through attention. And somewhere, far beyond his awareness, the system that the message pointed toward had already registered that someone had started reading too deeply. Miles Wei did not expose anything that day. But he also did not walk away unchanged. Because some discoveries do not end when you stop reading them. They begin.